Guys, welcome to On My Block. This is our Super Bowl aftermath show. And I just want everybody to notice that when I put together this like pre-roll deal here, this is for the Packers podcast, AG.
Yeah.
AG, welcome in.
Yep.
Ahman Green 30 for back at Ahman Green 30.
Yes, it's unhacked now. I created a longer password so I wouldn't be figured out, I guess. I don't know what it was.
I know
what it was. I know what it was. They hacked me with like a very...
It's because you're a gamer. You're hanging out with all the people with technology.
No,
none of my buddies are getting hacked.
No, man. It was somebody sent me this email that looked very legit from Twitter that I had to change some things about my account, and I fell for the banana in the tailpipe. That's what happened.
Dude. Some of that stuff's pretty legitimate.
I got another one from Spotify just yesterday saying, "Hey, your Spotify account needs this information." I mean, it looked legit. I mean, I'm looking at the Spotify logo. I'm looking at the everything in it, and I just it don't feel good. I'm deleting it.
Let me get through this read real quick because I'm going to disclose something that's quite embarrassing.
Okay.
BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. Everything from NFL playoffs are over.
Yep.
Super Bowl, post Super Bowl bets, post Super Bowl
NBA,
prospects for next year.
NBA All-Star coming up.
Yeah.
And all these trades.
We got pro and college basketball, UFC, mixed martial arts, esports, and more. You always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. With live betting options, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable, BetOnline is truly the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. So head to the website today or use your mobile device and join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. All right, before we get into anything else, because you just brought this up, the password hack, I'm going to disclose something that I'm not proud of.
Right.
I'm sitting, this is a long time ago now, a long time being probably 5 or 6 years. I'm waiting in line to pick up my kid in elementary school.
Okay.
And I get a phone call from, it says IRS on it.
Right.
Which right off the,
of course.
IRS
of course.
is not going to say IRS, it'd say Internal Revenue Service or something, right?
Right.
It said IRS. So I picked up the phone and blah, 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 blah. I was like not this close, but I was pretty close to giving these guys like $7,000, by credit card.
Right.
I was this close, and I was like, and then the guys, I can't remember exactly how it went, but they transfer they fished. They got somebody fishing, and once they were like, "You got a sucker on the line," they immediately transfer it to another person, right?
Yep.
So they transfer me to the other person because I'm kind of like, oh, that's weird, because like I've done. I make enough mistakes with like accounting, this and that, or the other thing. Like, hey, I could have screwed up something.
Right.
So they get me on the other line with this guy, and I'm like texting my wife, like texting like my business partner. I'm like, what the hell? Who is this? And they asked me, like, one of my business partner was like, get off the phone. Like, what are you doing? So I started talking to this new guy, and he said something, and I just literally started laughing out loud. And he's like, was something funny? I go, you almost had me, man. You know what I mean? And he got pissed off and hung up.
Yeah.
But I was this close to putting down the Amex on the IRS phone call.
Yeah, they get sneaky, man. They get real sneaky. When they start to transfer you over. And I say the biggest thing you do is you keep asking. You've come up with a question like, why is this? Why are you calling me? And we're doing this right now. I had one the other day, and I said, could you call me back tomorrow at 2:00? And they called me back. They called me back yesterday at 2:00 too. So I'm like, I'm not sure if they're legit or not, but
they're never legit until the cops show up. Like this one guy, they threatened. Here's when I knew it was fake. Here's what I remember now.
Okay.
They threatened that the cops were going to come pick me up, and I said,
my wife got that one. She's got that one.
That's when I was like, oh, okay, they're going to come pick me up for what now?
For what?
For $7,000? I don't think so.
Yeah, for $105. No, $100. No. So yeah, be careful. Be wary. Tune in the podcast. I gave people helpful tips on not to get hacked because when I got hacked, I had to research some things. So check out the Gamers Lounge from a few weeks ago.
if you would have kept that Ahman Green's Gamers Lounge handle on your Twitter, you would never got hacked. Nobody could even write it down.
Possibility. You're right there.
So this week there's been amongst other things. We talked about the turf. There's
Yep.
been a ton of commentary about this. I only want to revisit it one more time because there's a guy called the Sod Monster or the Sod Father. He's
Okay.
like the Sod guy, and he's like a huge Chiefs fan. He's the guy that installed the turf.
Okay.
But what we found out earlier is Patrick Peterson was on a show, and obviously he was an Arizona Cardinal for years before he went to Minnesota.
Yep.
And he said, "Here's what might happen." He said this before the show.
Ooh.
If it's humid outside and they bring it out and in or whatever, and they transfer it and the paint, it's gonna be moist and it's gonna be slippery
Because it's sweating.
Yeah,
it's sweaty.
he called the shot.
Yep.
What I thought was interesting was there, like there's a couple guys on, every offensive lineman is all of a sudden just circus sealing the Kansas City Chiefs tackles, right?
Right.
Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wahle, which they played really well.
Yeah, they played good.
It's not their fault.
They're
right?
not bad players, right?
No, that's not the narrative here at all, right?
Right.
It's just Hassan Reddick has been on a tear, and it's like he couldn't stand up. His shoes were so bad, but
Yeah.
it goes back to like it's not really the point of whether you should have the right shoes on or this that or if like people got hurt or didn't get hurt. The point is this is the biggest game of the year, and you guys didn't like. How did Patrick Peterson know 2 days prior to the game starting this is going to be a problem and nobody else figured it out? Like that to me, it kind of goes back to we're always talking about you're trying to dress up a product that is inherently violent. You're trying to dress up a product that inherently has all these. You're prone to injury and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting all these rules in place, and we love the players and this and that, and like it's all the while. It's like you're adding games to make revenue, right? You don't consider like the most important thing, which is the surface they play on.
Correct.
Just little stuff like that. I'm just always like, and I'm cynical as hell. Like I know, but this again was just egregious because I really did. I think it was. Had a bigger effect on the game than anybody really wants to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it because we're pros. We know what to look at, and to see that always happen. And I'm looking at running backs, I'm looking at wide receivers coming off their breaks, and you see the D line and O line matchups, and seeing how I know when a running back has made a false step and making a cut. If he's cutting off his back foot and he goes down, and say for what we saw with Hassan Reddick and Sweat coming off the edge, they trying to cut that corner, then all of a sudden, bloop, they're on the ground, and then Wahle, all they got to do is just fall and flop on top of them, and job done. And then Pat Mahomes has a little bit more time to throw the ball. So it's interesting.
So the Kansas City Chiefs had the parade. Pat Mahomes he had tied a couple off.
Yeah, I've seen video of him
before, during, and after.
Pachenko dancing, having a little shindig. Only one I thought I would see on social media would be Travis. Because he's the one that's always dancing, always celebrating.
And he did listen. There's two things that he did. He called he's just doubling down on like nobody thought the Chiefs are going to win. Which
right.
I don't know how that was a narrative. Like I don't know where he's living, but the Chiefs, were point and a half underdog in the Super Bowl. It certainly isn't a situation where nobody thinks they're going to win. But better than that, I don't know if you saw it. This dude's wearing a chain with a Bud Light can on it, and I'm talking like it's a piece of jewelry. It wasn't.
Oh, like Travis.
It wasn't like literally like on. I would have an aluminum Bud Light can that I
right, something fake. You just put it together,
and put a piece of string through it, right?
Right,
like real classic. Like this was a legitimate piece of jewelry, Bud Light chain. It was nice.
Oh man, I hopefully somebody took a picture of it or he posted it. Oh yeah, there it is. I see it. Yep.
Pat Mahomes says they can run it back. He said they'll be there next year. What do you think? Well, okay, let's start with this.
Yeah.
If they run it back, what are the biggest roadblocks? Just in general, what are the biggest roadblocks for these teams?
The biggest roadblock what I experienced and what I've seen as a fan, because the teams I was on, I'll say for me was college. We were able to we won the national title my freshman year, but then those guys coming back from my senior year in high school, Tommy Frazier and all those guys here, even though it's a different level, but it's still high end football, called D1 football back in 1995. Something that I realized they didn't get stuck in the past. They weren't thinking they stayed hungry. And Coach Osborne, the coaching staff, they kept those guys hungry. And so when I came in, they just basically said to me, "Hey, freshman, we're going to give you an opportunity to play. Just do your job. Don't mess up and run do this with the ball, what have you." And then Tommy, Aaron Graham, Aaron Taylor, those were our leaders on offense. Mike Minter, Tony Veland, Phil Coleman, Doug Coleman, sorry, Phil Ellis, Doug Coleman. Those are our leaders on defense. Mm-hmm. It had not changed. So what they did in 1994 before I got there, they basically recopied it for 1995. So my freshman year coming in, it was same. We weren't thinking about that Super Bowl
and I think that's
that national title where they beat Miami in Miami. That was in the past. We were looking.
I think that's so impressive too because back then, I mean, let's just call it what it was. Like, it was a lot harder to play football back then.
A lot, yes.
It was a more violent game, but let's not even talk about on the field, on the game day. I mean, like practices, everything was just harder. Like, you just hit more. Everything was hard. And sometimes when we start talking about, like, our team's able to stay hungry, and you see a guy like Pat Mahomes has his eyes on Brady. Like, he wants to be considered the greatest of all time.
Yes.
So he's going to lead that team, and so they're going to be, like, when we say hungry, but the other part of that is, like, they're not as beat up. And even though the season is longer, and and I'm not trying to dismiss, this is a very, very hard sport to play. Yeah. But let's face facts, man. The reason that all these guys could play longer than we could is because we were beating the hell out of each other every Wednesday and Thursday.
Every day.
Like, this is a completely different scenario. But to your point, like the leadership, Andy Reid, having been there now for 30 plus years.
Yep. Patrick
Mahomes, like
Mahomes.
These guys have won 2 now. They've been to 5 AFC championships in 5 years. They have a program and a process that they know works. And I think one thing that's paying for them, although it's not fair, is like they still have Bieniemy for whatever reason, right? They still have Spags. They're not like the Eagles who lost both their guys.
Correct.
So the leadership structure's in place. Here's what's going to get interesting. They got some free agents they got to figure out. Orlando Brown Jr., left tackle. Andrew Wiley, right tackle. Now they could tag them. They could sign them to long term. Do you think they're valuable enough to sign them? Like Andrew Wiley is a homegrown talent that's been there, has played different positions, has been a swing tackle, has been a swing guard, is now starting, played like well enough in that game where you're like, okay. Because it's not like statistically either of these guys had great seasons, but they played really, really well when it mattered most. And he's probably not going to command, like, he's not going to be a $20 million guy. So, like, I think he's kind of the no-brainer. Yeah. The Orlando Brown Jr. one, Orlando Brown Jr. might think and I don't agree with this, I do think he's a really good player, and I think he's super physical, and I think he brings that to that team, just like his dad did, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that he's in the top-tier echelon of tackles, and so if he's going to say to the Chiefs, you need to pay me $25, $22, $20 million a year, the Chiefs can do whatever they want. And, there's not a lot of good tackles out there. So maybe they're like, dude, we'll go ahead and pay you. It doesn't matter. But it has to be a consideration.
It has to be a consideration because they have been there for a long time. You said it. I said that value of being there, where then they're not, when I say they, the team, the coaching staff, and the rest of the players are not breaking in 2 new players or more new players because of free agency. When you could keep the nucleus of a team that took you to
offensive line, right? Just
especially offensive line. Yeah. Between offensive line, D-line, defensive backfields, or core of wide receivers, and then a quarterback, you could keep those and a running. It's all you keep the nucleus. 1 or 2 by
you just named every position.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean,
but to your point, Juju and Mecole Hardman, all this, they could be gone.
True.
So, I mean,
and the thing that I say that's the one position for this team that if it does change, it's no big deal, because we already saw what happened with Tyreek Hill leaving.
And free agency is going to allow us to bring in guys like we don't even know who's really going to be available right now. And a month from now, we might be like, and they could pick up Alan Lazard and go, okay, we'll just bring all the Packers guys over here and win.
Might as well. Marquez got a ring now. So, so that's the one position I'll say. I was just throwing off the top of my head. But now as I think about it more, wide receiver is the only position that can be picked apart and then put back together with a different crew, because the quarterback, as we know, he has no problem going to multiple targets in every single game. There is no favorite. We know a favorite guy is Travis Kelce, but when he knows the defense knows that, he's going to do whatever he's done with the ball, and we saw it this season.
Andy and Eric do such a good job of getting everybody open and creating opportunities. Yes. It's like Kurt Warner says it the best. Like when you watch something on TV, or then you rewatch it on Twitter or whatever, and you see all these experts. Like Kurt Warner says it the best. Like, we're not trying to get everybody open. We're trying to get one person open on this play. That's what people don't necessarily understand. When we run all these different routes, all these patterns, formations, personnel groupings, motions, it's to usually get one person open, or to say it another way, it's to leverage one person on the defense that's going to allow us to make a read to get that one person who's open the ball.
Yeah, finding the
and that doesn't have to be
problem.
Travis Kelce, right? That's what I think that's what they do as well as anybody else in the league.
Yeah, and find the matchup problem. That's what they do.
So having said that, who do you think, just weighing all the factors, like who's got a better chance of running this back, at least getting back to the Super Bowl? Is it KC or is it Philly?
Man, that's easy for me right now with the changeover in Philly already.
Yeah.
KC. I mean, when you have the OC and DC already, like I didn't even realize both both coordinators were gone. I thought just the OC went to Arizona. Then I heard later that the DC went. I can't remember where he went, but he's gone too.
Gannon's in Arizona, and Steichen's in
Colts.
Shano's with the Colts.
Okay, so it was the Colts. So yeah, I'm like, man, I'm like not even a week.
Can
2
you
days.
imagine? So Spags and Bieniemy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still there.
Win. Bieniemy drops 38. I know he's got Pat Mahomes, but dude, it's like you dropped 38 and you won again, and it's 5 AFC championships in a row. Let's just have an honest conversation about something, dude.
Okay.
What the hell is going on? Like with Bieniemy, there's got to be some. Is he a bad interviewer? Because it's not like it can't.
I know.
I don't want to be insensitive, but there's no way it's just because like the color of his skin at this point. It has to be at least and something else, right?
It was. I was talking about this with somebody. I think it was Gilbert and Dorsey. We talked about, and they reminded me of something that happened. I think he had a domestic thing in the last 5 years.
Yeah, but that was Colorado.
Was it Colorado?
Yeah, dude, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean that was the only thing that popped up. I thought it was recently than that. I didn't know it was 20 years ago. If it was 20 years ago, yeah, that's then. So it's ridiculous
because they brought that up last time. He didn't get any jobs,
and that's terrible, and that's sad. You speak in the case of, I mean, I'm a victim of that. The situation had with me and my youngest daughter. That was 2017, and I've said to every person that's questioned me on that, I said, hey, I'm coaching at a D3 school right now. Now, if it was a problem with me being around young adults, why would I be coaching kids right now?
Right.
And now I'm at the University of Nebraska. I'll say the same thing because they're saying, well, you need to, speak out. And I was like, I do speak out. I talk about it. I explained what happened, and then I moved on.
Don't you love when people tell you what you should be doing?
Right. And I'm like, I
handle my business. Thank you.
Right. I'm 40. Right. I'm a man. I'm a grown ass man. So for that situation for Eric, it's unfortunate. It may still, which is sad, it still ties back to the color of his skin and the knowledge that people may think he may not have and own, which obviously he does because we've seen him. You already said the stats. I don't need to repeat them.
Yeah. And
so people are still stuck in there. That's why we got to have this rule. That's why we got to push it to like have taxes put on it. You don't do the rule, the Rooney rule and all that properly, you're going to get hit. You're going to take some draft picks away or whatever. Find something to discipline these teams, the owners, because the owners are the ones doing it, making the decisions and going quickly through the process. Oh, let me just get this guy out the way until I can hire my guy next. That's kind of how they're going through everything.
The only thing that I can think of, and it's not a legitimate excuse or whatever. It's just, some of this is just how the world works, right? So the only thing I can think of is this scenario. He interviews, it doesn't go well. Mm-hmm. Or he interviews and they just decide they like somebody else better. And I'm talking about 5 years ago now, or 4 years ago, or 3, whenever.
Correct.
And now a lot of these teams, like, most of these guys' turnover is like within 2 or 3 years of head coaches, right?
Yeah.
So let's see, they're just going through the same owners are looking at the same people. A lot of these guys might go, well, I already interviewed him. I'm not going to interview him again. And I don't know how many, if we sit here and look at it, like how many people does that apply to? Does that apply to Rex Ryan? Does that apply to Spags? Does that, I don't know. But it's almost as, it's like, we'll talk about this later, but like low key, like Brian Flores, like he was a winner in Miami. Yeah. And they got rid of him because he was in a fight with Chris Greer, the general manager.
Yeah, I remember that.
Difference of opinion about Tua.
Yep.
But then he files the lawsuit and everything, and it's like, dude, he's sneaky. Just got picked up as DC for the Vikings. It might be the best hire of the offseason.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it might be the best hire of the offseason. But like that dude should be a head coach. And like no disrespect to anybody who just got a head coaching job, and we'll go through the list later. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest, like Eric Bieniemy and like when I think of Brian Flores, like because I know dudes in that building, they love. Ahman,
Yeah.
They loved him. I mean, they respected him so much. And the fact that that dude was an assistant on Tomlin's, staff, and
Right.
now just got a DC job when he should probably still be a head coach.
Correct.
The whole thing sucks.
Yeah.
But
It sucks. But like I said, for the Vikings, they're going to be a problem. It's going to still be interesting in NFC North, especially if we know the person, we know who goes to New York or San Francisco or Oakland.
we're still talking about the Chiefs. You look at like some hurdles they got to get over because the AFC stacked, right? And so
it's just crazy.
You look at the AFC
fast.
Well, it's quarterback league now, right?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting.
When you look at the AFC West, they got to get through there again. Chargers, they have Justin Herbert, they have Joey Bosa, they have Khalil Mack, right? Mm-hmm. But they still have Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
And Brandon Staley, everybody thought he was going to get fired on the plane flight home after blowing that 27-point lead to the Jaguars. He's still there. They just brought in a new DC, so we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, Kellen Moore. Oh, no, that's OC.
Raiders don't have a quarterback right now. We don't know what they're going to happen. They don't have any kind of defense. I looked over the roster. I mean, they have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones didn't have a great year, but Chandler Jones is still Chandler Jones.
Yep.
You don't even recognize names on their defense, and that's maybe I'm just a casual fan, and that's why. But they don't really have like dudes on defense. They need a full on. You're not going to win a championship there with that defense. Is my point. Broncos have Peyton now, Sean Payton, but I think Russell Wilson. I think Sean Payton and Russell Wilson will probably get along well together.
Yeah.
I just don't know how fast or how long that's gonna take. And like Sean Payton again is one of those guys where you're gonna as good a career as you had with Drew Brees in New Orleans, you're gonna have to go ahead and prove it to me again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like because if you start putting stats up and just take away narratives, look at objective measures. Mike McCarthy and Sean Payton are very, very similar.
Right.
And everybody thinks, Mike McCarthy's not this and that. And it's like.
Yeah, you got to show up.
Yeah,
it's
just,
man. Just as a player.
One Super Bowl and one Super Bowl, And so if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm feeling pretty good about all this stuff.
Very good.
The thing that I'm not feeling good about, if I'm the Chiefs, is Joe Burrow kept the entire coaching staff still there. Their line's gonna be better.
Yeah.
And they have to think about. There's a couple free agents. They got Jesse Bates and Von Bell safeties that they got to think about re-signing, which they probably should because they played at high level. And then they got Hayden Hurst at tight end. Perrine's got as a free agent. He's the backup running back.
Right. Yep.
They're looking like that team's there, man. The core, like you said, the core components of that team. Pretty solid, and they're going to be there for a minute. So
and their defense, like it was a difference from last year Super Bowl run to this year. Getting through the playoffs for the Bengals. So they just had one or two plays difference in that Chiefs games, and we could be, it's a Chiefs and Philadelphia matchup. Or Bengals and Cincinnati or Bengals and Eagles matchups in this game.
And there's another name, and look, it's all trendy, right? Because if Joe Burrow doesn't show up into for the Bengals 2 years ago. That whole staff's fired.
Yeah.
Zach Taylor was on the hot seat. Everyone's going to get fired. But he's there. They're not. Everything's looking great. And Lou Anarumo has done a phenomenal job with the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And I don't see Lou Anarumo getting any head coach looks either. And I know Lou. Like Lou would be a good head coach. He's got a easy demeanor, very businesslike. Players love him. Have a ton of respect for him. He likes to develop guys from a mental standpoint as well as on the field.
Yep, that's a good coach right there.
Yeah, I mean he's got what you want in a head coach. I don't see him getting any interviews. So again, maybe it's an age thing. Maybe it's turned into a couple different factors, but it's
right. It is all interesting.
You look at the rest of the AFC, and you look at like the AFC East, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets all have reasons to be excited. In that division, the Patriots just hired Adrian Clement, offensive line, which I love, his offensive line coach. But I know Mac Jones is looking to run it back now that he's got what he thinks is going to be a good offensive staff behind him. And then the AFC South, man, like Texans got D'Amico, but he's not going to win for a couple of years.
He got some time.
The rest of those teams are all kind of level right now. Shano's going to do, I think, a good job with the Colts. I don't know what their quarterback's going to be. The Jags are probably in the driver's seat right now just because
with
of their quarterback.
Doug and Travis. Or Trevor, excuse me.
Doug and Trevor, and then the Titans, like Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's teams are always well coached and play hard. is Ryan Tannehill going to be the? I mean, there's a lot of questions there, but like I'm not making any except for Joe Burrow. I just don't feel like there's anything definitive in the AFC anymore where you're like, everyone's saying it's murderer's row, and it's right, but like Josh Allen kind of dropped down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the Dolphins are stepping up, and I think the Jets, if the Jets get Aaron, that's a whole different ball of yarn, right?
Yep,
So,
whole different ball game now.
But except for those guys, like I'm looking at the Chiefs. I feel the same way you do. I think Philly could have 9 new starters on their team next year.
Yeah.
They could lose 9 guys. I mean, the number. If you look at Philly's free agent list, man, it's Fletcher Cox, Robert Quinn, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Jason Kelsey, James Bradbury, Isaac Seumalo. Those are the first. So the top 8 right there: Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joe. I mean, Boston Scott, Zach Pascal, T.J. Edwards, Miles Sanders, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Wow,
bro,
that's not good.
That's a lot. That's a
That's
lot
a lot of
dudes.
conversations they have to have.
And if I'm just looking at through this right now, if it's me,
Right.
Fletcher Cox probably wants to stay. He's a Philly for life. He'll go in the Hall of Fame as a Philly. So
Graham
he might
too.
stay.
I'll say Graham too.
Graham might stay.
And Kelsey.
Javon Hargrave is going to leave.
Yeah. Potentially.
If Kelsey plays, he'll stay. James Bradbury's probably going to leave. Seumalo. Now Isaac should stay because their line's so good, and he's not going to get better coaching and better system.
Right.
But he'll probably leave because I'm guessing he's projected to make somewhere in the vicinity of 12 to 13 million, where he goes on the free agent market, he'll make 17.
Mm-hmm.
He'll get like Brandon Scherf money because he'll be the top guy. Dude, Chauncey Gardner. I mean, can we get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to come up to Green Bay?
Ooh. Hey, he already played in a cold place before, a little colder, but got potential. I say if it looks good to him, by that time we'll know where Aaron's at, and we'll see where other players are. Free agency for Green Bay that are there or not there. So
that's a dude that can play. He can play nickel slot. He can play safety. He's exactly what this team needs as far as that plug and play reliable safety right now. He's 25 years old. He's going to back up the truck, man, but might as well back it up in Wisconsin, man. State taxes aren't that bad.
Exactly. You earned it. 6.5%. Not bad.
Hey, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When we talk about the media, and everyone's talking about like is Mahomes on the Mount Rushmore and everything, when we talk about, and just give us perspective of the athlete, we're sitting around and how much does like winning a championship go into how we think about guys? Like, I'll give you my perspective, but you give the audience yours first.
Yeah, I mean, like, my perspective of Pat Mahomes hasn't changed because this is what I've seen him doing because of the preparation, because he loves the process like we do. I could tell by the stuff he goes through in the offseason, how he gets his body ready to play, the way he talks in interviews. That's just nothing just for the conversation. That's how he talks every time, when he's talking to his teammates, when he's talking in the offseason, preparing himself every year from year one when he took over, when Alex Smith, after he got
50
hurt.
touchdowns. Yep.
Yeah. From year one, I knew this kid had it. So to me, to be honest, it's no surprise. I said it just got to be, he's got to be mindful of his mistakes, because we saw a few years ago where some of his bad throws and got him out of the game, got the team out of the game, got him out of the push to the Super Bowl. But the ceiling is high for Pat. And I see anything that he's going to do physically on that football field, he's going to be capable of, because it's comparable to a young, we go to another sport, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, where they just do things. They do things because they put the work in, and they're putting the work in. Like, you knew Kobe was putting work in. You knew Michael Jordan. And then Michael Jordan was a type of athlete where if you tested him, you said, oh, you can't do it. If the media said, oh, Michael Jordan cannot be a defensive player, he's just a one-sided shooter, and then what happens? He becomes defensive player of the year. So Pat Mahomes, he's kind of in that conversation, but for whatever he does for me, it's like I knew he could do it because he has the mindset.
I'd say it this way, right? Because we can talk about Pat, you can talk about really any position, any player situation. I think that we are extremely envious of people who play on championship teams. I think that there is a level of respect because we have played, like even though you and I don't have a Super Bowl ring, we've played in big games, NFC championships, playoff, second round, and we know how how easy it is to perform poorly, and how many people you see perform poorly under the lights. And so to show up and play and to be ready to play, I personally have a ton of time for guys. Like I always remember like Joe Andruzzi. I don't know if you were there with Joey, but
I was Joey, there. He was there in 2000 and 2001.
Yeah, so Joey gets cut in training camp, and goes to New England and wins 3 Super Bowls, and is a starting right guard. And I just remember, and I always think about like Mike Vrabel and William McGinnis, like guys I had to play against Vince Wilfork. Like you put them on other teams, I still think they're good players, but because they were with that team and they were winning that many championships, like you do look at them a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if they were contributors.
Yeah, contributors, and I have like it's more respect for me because I just see, because I know the effort, the work, the time, like you said, the process that goes into getting to that game, getting through the AFC, NFC championship game, getting to qualify for the playoffs. That's all very rough, and regardless of the rule changes now, it's still a mental drag on you because you got to go through things. And so to see what he's doing, to see what the players on that team are doing together collectively is just an older respect because, like I said, it's all about the process, and I love it, and they understand it. And then having everybody on the same page from the coaching staff on down, I say ownership, coaching staff on down to the players, what they want to do in that building down in Arrowhead. They've been doing it for the last more than 5 years because it started when Andy Reid got there. I'm reminded that it's been over 10 years he's been there. It's like, man, just knowing that.
We had Alex Smith for years.
Wow, yeah, it's just he's been there for that long. Weathered some storms because he had athletes situations pop up, and just being the guy, the person he is as a coach and a human being, was able to manage that, weather that storm, to keep coaching and staying on track of where now they are at right now. Super Bowl perennial, and the dynasty has been talked with them, which is they're right there. They've earned it.
When it comes to like locker room talk, I think the bottom line for us is we really don't sit there and care if the guy played in the Super Bowl or not when we're thinking about ranking players. Right? No. Like we don't sit there and go,
nope.
Well, Mahomes has to.
Media does that.
Yeah, it's just not, and it's not like a bad thing. I'm glad that people have fun with it, but we just don't think about it that way. Like if you ask me to rank who the best tackles are in the league, none of them play on the championship team, or none of them have Super Bowl rings. Now that I'm thinking about it. Best guards in the league, the same thing. Like one has nothing to do with the other. Because we know it's a team sport, and maybe they have that conversation with quarterbacks because they are the face of the franchise. Maybe it just needs a little bit more because it is a quarterback-driven league. But it always is interesting to me because it's like I have, it's like why do you have Brady and Joe Montana up there? And it's like, well, Brady did win. Every time you want to say anything about Brady, well, he's not the best regular season quarterback, but not the best playoff quarterback. He's like, well, he does have 7 Super Bowl rings. He is a winner, and like I think for you and me at least, when you think about when you start categorizing people, that word, like he's a winner, that probably carries more weight than anything else. Like, is he a great athlete? Is he this? Is he a winner? Just like, does he win?
Yes,
that matters a lot, man.
Yeah, it does. And when you say is he a winner, that means you could put him in the middle of nowhere. And then whoever he's around, if they weren't winning, they didn't have the program that was on track then, and it gets right with him there, he's that type of player. That's who you want on your team. Those are the type of players you want in your locker room as a coach and as a player. That's what you want in there. You want guys that's going to figure it out with what they got, who's around them, and like, what, we're going to, all right, I get to know you, you get to know me. This is how I work. You work like this. Now we're going to work together to do this. We got a goal. We want to win a championship. And then when you have that, things work out.
Well said. Let's switch gears here real quick. So we have a couple. We have 5 new head coaches and a bunch of coordinators. I want to go through this list. Tell me who you think the best hire was this offseason. Peyton with the Broncos, Gannon with the Cards, Shane O'Mac-Steichen with the Colts, Frank Wright with the Panthers, D'Amico Ryans with Houston.
I would say
who's the best and why?
I say the best right there, just because of experience and what he's done already, is Sean Payton. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's been, he was at New Orleans for 10 plus years and knows where he has to as a head coach, you got to marry yourself with the quarterback and the OC. And, even if he's more of the play caller than the person who coordinates the offense, but you got to have that relationship to where you could push and pull and tug on each other to find out how we're going to win this game. When the game counts, or we got a good defense, or we got a good D line that stops the run, and now we got to pass, or we got a good back end that has a good defensive backs, and now we got to run the ball more. To make those adjustments, to be open to that, and always be willing to be critiqued by your peers as a head coach. So he's been down that road, and he had a lot of great teams. So I'll say, Sean, right now off of that, because all the other coaches, like was it Station? Is how you say his name, Station? First year coach. First year is always tough. They do have magical seasons. We saw that with Soriani this year. We saw that with O'Donnell.
Shano's a good quarterback coach, man.
Right. We saw that with O'Donnell this year.
They don't have a quarterback, so
right.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we saw that with O'Donnell in Minnesota this year. First year coach, boom. There's won a division. So you have those success stories.
That's an indictment on Mike Tomlin, though. I mean, not Mike Tomlin. What's his name? Who? Jesus, not Mike Tomlin. What was his name? Come on, Zimmer.
Oh, Zimmer. Yeah, unfortunately. It's I mean, good. I mean, tough coach, but just couldn't figure it out.
Peyton's good because he's Bill Parcells, right? He's Bill Parcells' tree. So that's he's going to coach the same way. So it's like
I forgot that.
It's Russell Wilson's going to have to Russell Wilson last year
held accountable
would not do well with Bill Parcells. So it'll be interesting to 100%. See how that works. I'm super interested in that dynamic. Yep. Me personally, Frank Reich. While I think there should be a 2-year moratorium on head coaches so new head coaches can get jobs.
Yeah.
I think the staff that he has around him is good. They don't really have an answer at quarterback. I think I'm thrilled that DeMeco Ryans is
Me too.
Head coach,
I'm super excited.
I can't wait to see what kind of staff he puts
I just
together.
know I didn't say this name because he has work to do.
Well, I mean, look, if they go to 25th place, they're better than 32nd.
True.
Right? So
if they increase... Yeah, 2 inches an inch. I'll take an inch.
And they're in a division where you can make up some ground, quite frankly. But the one that I don't get, I don't get Jonathan Gannon going to the Cards. Like you have a quarterback who's got a reputation and not a good one in the way he behaves.
Talking about Kyler, yes.
Okay, and you bring in a young, inexperienced defensive head coach. Now that could be a genius move if he goes a la Sean McVay, and I know he's not 32, but if he goes a la Sean McVay and goes hire whatever the equivalent of Wade Phillips is as offensive coordinator.
Right.
When Sean went to LA, hired 80-year-old Wade, that was a genius move. I feel like Jonathan Gannon needs to do something similar on the offensive side of the ball where it's like, you're going to be the head coach of the offense and whatever you say goes. And you got to deal with whatever mess they've created down there with the contracts and the whining and the shoulder shrugging, all of it. They got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's gonna be some work. That process has started.
I think what's maybe more interesting is some of the coordinator moves this year, right?
Yeah.
Pat's go to get Bill O'Brien out of Alabama. Okay, so his career's being resurrected.
Yep, he was with the Texans, and now he went back to college.
He had good years with the Texans. Then he got general manager duties, and
same thing happened to Sherm. We know that road, unfortunately.
Nathaniel Hackett goes to the Jets. I think they're doing it so they can get Aaron Rodgers. We'll see. Mike LaFleur goes from the Jets to the Rams. Sean McVay calls the plays. I think this is a rehab job. If we're just calling it what it is.
Salah let LaFleur's brother go now, except not to the Packers.
Brian Schottenheimer is going to Dallas. Mike McCarthy's calling plays.
It's always going to be that way.
This is the Mike's last stand deal. He got rid of his entire offensive staff.
Yeah.
Who knows why? Someone's got to pay the piper when Jerry's. Here's the interesting thing about the Dallas Cowboys. And Michael, who said this? Oh, I think Shannon Sharp said this a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about how Tom Brady couldn't go to the Cowboys because Jerry Jones can't stand anybody else but Jerry Jones being the face of the franchise. And then you went like, oh wait, he's right. Because think about it.
Yeah.
Since they were winning with Irvin and Aikman and Emmett, Jerry Jones has always that's why he fired Jimmy Johnson.
Well, Jimmy was like, I want out. He's like, get me out of here. He knew that too because he knew him since college.
All these other coaches, every other coach they brought him, they've never brought in a personality that's bigger than Jerry's.
You're true.
It's nuts to think about.
It's true. Yeah, he's right.
Titans have brought in Tim Kelly to be their OC. Bobby Slovic's going to be the Texans OC. Now, he was the run coordinator or the pass coordinator for the Niners, so he's a D'Amico Ryan's guy. I mean, they were coaching together.
Got it.
Brian Johnson's going to step up and be the Eagles OC. He was the quarterback's coach. It's probably a good thing. Arizona, that's what we're just talking about.
Question
no
mark.
idea.
Yep.
Now, Eric Bieniemy's getting a chance maybe to call plays with the Commanders. Dude, I'm just going to lean back on what you said on Monday. If I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm not going anywhere now.
No.
I'm not going to the Commanders.
No,
Commanders are
especially
year to year.
No. I mean, I will go somewhere. It's going to be a playoff team, 100%. That's been.
There's no other. I mean, jobs. There's no job.
No, I know. I'm just saying, if it was open, that's where I'm going. I'm going to a playoff contender. I'm not taking a step down.
Okay, this is the one that I'd ask you about then, and I think this is a good hire. They brought in Todd Monken from Georgia to call the plays for the Ravens, and I guess I'm assuming
that's gonna be tough.
That Lamar Jackson is part of that conversation. It was rumored that Lamar Jackson had positive input about Todd Monken going to the Ravens. Okay, and
that's an OC. He's an OC.
He's going to be the OC.
Okay.
Now, for me, if I was the Ravens, I would have said, okay, Eric Bieniemy, do you want to call the plays? That would have been the one spot this offseason if it wasn't a head coaching job.
Yeah.
And I still don't know if I'd leave. But that would have been very compelling.
It would have been.
Because of Lamar, just because of Lamar
exactly.
Jackson, right?
You have a talent that you have a similar you have actually a little better talent, obviously, but now you go into another talent that you could now develop. Todd Monken coming from the college level, that's going to be some adjusting for him. Even though he's bringing an offense that's going to run RPO app options for the quarterback, which Lamar knows, but the college level is still going to be some transitioning bumps in the road for him, getting used to the players, being grown men instead of college players. Even though Nick Saban runs his program like an NFL team, it's still going to be some adjustments. So that's going to be interesting.
The good news is at the coordinator position, you don't have quite the interaction.
Yeah,
we've been in those rooms.
You just have your group.
You're like, bro, you're too much of a rah-rah guy. You can't. This isn't college.
Yeah.
These are the two biggest. This is the biggest one though. Brian Flores to Minnesota. Brian Flores is a really good defensive coordinator. He's a great head coach. He's a really good defensive coordinator. They have talent.
This is
nobody's talking about this, man. This isn't the NFC North is an issue next year.
A problem, especially if it's going to be worse if Aaron leaves, but if he stays, it's still a problem.
Because the Lions are only getting better.
They're getting better now, and so between Detroit, the Bears, the Bears are just shooting themselves in the foot. They're just listening to the media.
Justin Fields is going to be, I think he could be a elite quarterback. They better put some people around him.
They better stop talking about trading him. It's the dumbest.
It's like this is like playing. This is what the media turned into. This is like telephone.
Yeah.
One person said that one day. And it's like, oh, we got to talk about it.
It's a virus now. It's like and they're really considering it. And it's like,
we don't know if they're. It's a thing. We don't know if they're considering. They'd be fools to consider it.
They would be.
Bryce Young over Justin Fields. Stand them next to each other.
Exactly. They're two different athletes, physically built. Let's just start there.
Bryce Young looks like you could steal his lunch money, and I think he's going to be a great quarterback. But he's not. He's going to get hurt, man.
They had,
you put him in that kind of offense?
Yeah.
That offensive line?
No.
Forget it.
It's not there.
Steve Wilkes doesn't get the head coaching job. This is the one as
You're
a
not
Panther,
happy about. Yeah.
Oh, it's just furious that he didn't get that job. But goes to the Niners as DC, hopefully, because he got hosed in Arizona. He got the 1-year hose job.
That's true.
Right?
Before Kingsbury.
And they bring Kingsbury, who didn't even have success in freaking Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Anyways,
just shaking our heads.
Let's get to some Packer stuff because
I know this is a nonsense. That's what it is.
So my favorite moment of the week was
mine's too. I saw it too.
You saw it. Times. Okay, yes. So Aaron gets on and says, hey, "I got nothing against Rappaport and Schefter, but they don't know shit." And it's like
I was like, "What?"
It's like, well, we've been saying the exact same thing for as long as anybody will listen. And I think. This is where, unfortunately, this is kind of where media goes, right? It's like,
yes.
And I think Adam Schefter, to me, is a genius because he has mastered, and I'm being dead serious. I'm not saying this in any malicious way.
Okay.
He has mastered the art of, and sometimes he has breaking information, but he has mastered the art of saying absolutely not. Like he'll take an entire segment and
I get what you're
the
saying.
pace at which he talks and the things that he says absolutely nothing. It's like me saying, he'll say, the Packers could trade Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. The Packers could also take the hit on Aaron Rodgers' money and pay him $50 million this year. Sources say they could do either. That's it. That's just what and it's like it took 30 seconds. The guy's a machine. The guy's a magician. I honestly have nothing but respect for him, and I think he's broke a lot of stories. But ever since he broke the story on Rodgers during the draft and kind of hijacked the draft with what turned out to be some not 100% true information, I kind of lost time for it. So I like that he came out and just said, "Stop listening to these guys. This is ridiculous."
Yes, stop it. Makes him think on your own. You got a brain, use it. Basically.
Here's the real question. Will Joe Barry? Okay, because we hired Joe. Joe Barry's still there.
Yeah.
Vic Fangio is who's it? You know, Joe Barry's running Vic Fangio's defense.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was an opportunity this year for defensive coordinators?
Flores.
The guy they just sent over from Denver, who's going to be the Commanders guy. Is Barry going to continue to use the soft zone coverage? Okay, rush 4. When we have 7 first-round picks, like there's kind of 2 ways to do business in the NFL right now, right?
Yes.
There's kind of the Vic Fangio model where you play a lot of cover 2 shell, you show late, right? So you're playing 6, you're playing 8, you're playing 4, you're playing 2, and you rotate safeties, but you're trying to hold that as long as possible. But at the base of it, you're doing 2 things. One, you're trying to keep the deep passes. You're trying to keep everything underneath in front of you, which is obviously what the Packers have been doing.
That's the zone. Yep.
And 2, you're trying to limit the amount of rushing yards a team can get by only playing 6 in the box. Which I mean, I'm describing the Packers defense because this is where it comes from. What that does allow for is, in positive ways, is like you see against Justin Jefferson. They have built-in double team and bracket coverages when you go 3-by-1 when you want to isolate a certain player. Like all of that's baked into that system. Anybody who wants to learn more about that system, literally type in Vic Fangio's defensive coverages into the Google machine, and you can learn like all you want and more about them. But when you look at our defense, because the other thing they do is on the line of scrimmage, he kind of created what's called a gap and a half, right? So we used to have guys that shoot the gap. Like you look at the Jets right now, Robert Salah, you look at the Pete Carroll defenses. They shoot gaps, right? They attack. Single high safety, shoot gaps, penetrate. Then you look at like the original 3-4 teams. Bill Belichick's teams are these. They were 2 gapping. So they would have 3 guys. And I remember that. This is Tony Siragusa. This is Sam Adams.
Yep.
We're not allowing you to get to the linebackers, right? Because we're going to try to take 2. And we're really just trying to read and hold you in position. These guys play what we call gap and a half. We see Kenny Clark do this as well as anybody else in the league, even though it's not a foolproof defense. But you're basically trying to attack your gap, but you're extending your back arm so you can always play back half of the offensive lineman and play back on the cutback. And you're essentially trying to say that these 2 guys can take these 3 gaps. And that just tries to keep those linebackers clean. And it's not easy to do. And you have to have the right personnel to do it. And that's why they bring in a Devontae Wyatt last year, first-round draft pick. They're hoping he can develop into that guy, right?
Right.
But for me, it's like when I look at that defense, you look at your personnel. Is that what you saw some success later in the season? We talk about Minnesota specifically, but knowing Rashawn Gary is going to be back, knowing that Eric Stokes is going to be back healthy. You have 7 first-round picks on defense. You now have 2 guys that can play at a high level, or at least Quay's going to develop into a high-level linebacker.
Yep.
Should we change the demeanor of our defense to mimic what or to mirror what we have from a talent standpoint?
100%. Like I mean, every team in the NFL, all 31 teams that know the Packers, they know what they got in that defensive backfield, but they also know that Joe Barry is not utilizing them like you just mentioned. I mean, if you got first rounders across your defensive backfield, that means I'm playing a lot of man press, and then I'm gonna disguise stuff to then trick the quarterback and the offense, because then I could get away with holding on to the number one receiver because I got a number one defensive back on him. Or I got a number two, slot defensive back to cover your slot guy. I can match up. There's no matchup problem. So you can let loose and showing blitzes and then doing certain things that the Patriots do with half the talent. They run the same type of defense. It's just they are disciplined. They don't have the first rounders. They'll have third and fifth and seventh rounders playing a man press defense, but they're staying disciplined to what the rules are of the defense. They don't go outside of that. But Green Bay has the talent to do that, to go outside of some of the rules and break them and still get away with covering a number one receiver out on the outside and a number one slot on the inside.
When you run a more single high, when you're a little more aggressive, there's a couple of things that can. Well, I mean, first of all, we're running all this two shell. We have tons of communication issues. That's kind of like
that's one problem. Right.
It's problem number one because you're running a lot of that stuff, and yeah, granted, you're trying to hide a lot of these coverages, but you're running a lot of that stuff. It should take care of a lot of the communication problems because you have guys at different levels that can see. Running single high, you don't necessarily have that as easily. While running single high, because you have a safety down, you have more guys in the box towards the line of scrimmage. You can now fire your guns off the edges a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can create a little more of a pressure defense, more advantageous situations. And knowing that, like you said, these first-round draft picks can pick up the guys on the back end. The hallmark of a good coach, though, or a good coaching staff, is that you don't bring in guys and say you have to fit our system. You've already chosen who you've brought in. Like, they've already drafted and brought all these guys as free agents. So now it's the coach's responsibility to mold their defensive philosophy around who they have in the building.
Exactly.
Let's give our examples. I'm a 295-pound left guard. They're not going to sit there and ask me to run 5-step drop back the entire game. They're just like, it don't make any sense. Like, do so. Hey, the kid can move the kid, right?
Yep.
You're a good receiver. You're a great running back. They're not going to ask you to be this multi-purpose guy where you're going to catch more passes than you run. Like, you're not you're an all-down back, but you're not in the sense of like a LaDainian Tomlinson, who might have just as many receptions as he did carries in a game. It's a different style. You play to the style of your athletes, and that's what a great coach does. I'll be interested to see what kind of they have to make some adjustments. I'll be interested to see what they are.
Yeah, they have to. And that's going to be determined by draft and free agency coming up. We'll see where that goes.
Aaron Rodgers, the one team that keeps coming up is the Jets.
Yes.
And I was just thinking to myself, like, I wonder if the Jets are a better fit than the Packers. Like, you look at the team by team. So let's go through the real quick 5 minutes. Let's go through the roster, okay?
Yeah.
Offensive. Okay, first of all, they got they got Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, offense and defensive rookies of the year.
Yep. I was about to say defensive rookie of the year right there.
Yeah. Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, Jeff Smith, Denzel Mims. Wide receiver group's pretty good.
Yeah.
We could call it even if you want.
Corey Davis, is he still there? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Corey's still there.
Yep.
So let's call that even. Now, here's where it gets interesting, right? Because we do have David Bakhtiari. We don't know his health. We don't know the situation. We don't know what they're going to even do really this year. I mean, I assume they're going to keep him because the cap number doesn't really make a lot of sense to not keep him. But if they're all healthy, Mekhi Becton, who's a mammoth, Laken Tomlinson has been a great guard in this league for a number of years now. They might get a new center, but it could be the kid Dan Feeney from the Chargers. But they have Elijah Vera Tucker, George Fant, Max Mitchell, like for right tackle. They have some guys on that offense. They have at least 3 guys that could start on this team.
Right.
Okay. I mean, offensive line. They have 3 guys that could start on this team. They got C.J. Azuma, Tyler Conklin. Let's say neither team has tight ends right now. They're both kind of looking for that guy, but Tyler Conklin's a good player. C.J. Azuma's made some catches in this league. Quarterback situation. It's like right now you got Jordan Love or Zach Wilson, right? But
right.
Listen, now your position. Yeah. Breece Hall is legit.
Coming back. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait. He was all pro his rookie year.
Agreed.
Oh my God.
Until he got hurt, he was all pro.
Exactly. He was all pro bowling.
And we love our guys.
Yes.
And they only have one. Right, the other guys aren't as good. Like they're
Ty Johnson, he got a little something,
but he's not AJ Dillon. Like if you're looking at one, and
you know
what I'm saying.
Oh,
but to me, Breece Hall is at the minimum at the minimum on par with Aaron Jones.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
that's fair. 100%.
Defensively, their performance is not even close to. I mean, they're a top 10 defense, but
Yeah,
John Franklin Myers, first round pick, Jermaine Johnson from last year, Bryce Huff, Quinnen Williams, all pro Quinnen
problem.
Williams.
He's a
right?
problem.
Nathan Shepard, Carl Lawson, who was just coming. So Carl Lawson was the biggest free agent pickup the year before, but unfortunately he blew out his knee. He was coming up from Cincinnati, and I'm telling you, bro, I watch this guy all the time. He is a problem. He was just coming back this year from that ACL. Wait till next year. He is a problem. Michael Clemens, Vinny Curry, Quincy Williams at linebacker, C.J. Mosley at linebacker, Hall of Fame caliber player, C.J. Mosley, Quan Alexander, who came out and just balled coming out of New Orleans last year. And now, dude, DJ Reed, Jordan Whitehead, Sauce, Michael Carter II. I mean, dude, that team is stacked. They have a Super Bowl defense.
Yes.
Even in that division, they got a Super Bowl defense. They literally look like they're one player away from going deep in that AFC.
And that player might be on offense, being quarterback.
So, yeah,
Be
I
that
don't know,
quarterback.
man. Like, if I'm sitting there, because everyone's like, Raiders, this, that. Like, dude, the Jets are legit. Like, you look at that roster, the Raiders don't have that defense.
Yeah, and the proof of the pudding with Salah. You know, he's one of them coaches. He demands high excellence and discipline and tackling and being physical, offensively and defensively.
I love watching that guy. I love watching him when he was a coordinator of the Niners on the sideline, man. He just looks like you're like, dude, I want to play for that guy. Like, you know what I mean?
And he was that dude when we were with the Texans. You know, him as a coach, we would just have certain conversations, and he'll come up to me in practice. He'd be like, AG, he said, dude, are you trying to really hurt people when you run it in practice? I said, no, I'm just getting ready for Saturday. He said, I like that. So I'm like, no, I'm just getting ready for the weekend, man, for Sundays, for Monday nights. He's like, okay, I like that. Keep doing it. I'm like, all right, thanks. I will.
One of the big questions this year, just to wrap this thing up, one of the big questions this year with the Packers in particular, we talked about the tight end position of the Jets, but Robert Tunyon's coming off that ACL. I thought he made a lot of strides this year, becoming a more complete tight end, and I became a fan of his. But I don't know if the Packers should get him back, or Joe will try to if they can find a real star. And there's a couple free agents out there, for my money that are really, really good players. Dalton Schultz, I don't know if he gets out of Dallas. He was only 26 years old, but
no, they ain't letting him go.
He's a guy that can do everything at that position. He's a really good, complete 5-tool tight end. Evan
Ingram. Yeah.
You just have another receiver. He was a good player, and he was a good player last year. But he's more of a receiving tight end. He's a really, really athletic guy. Hayden Hurst is going to be a free agent. I think since he keeps Hayden Hurst, he has had some injury history. Yeah. I like Irv Smith from Minnesota. I don't think we bring in Irv Smith. Some of these other guys. The other two guys that I was thinking of, and then I realized how they're a little bit older, but Jordan Akins and O.J. Howard in Houston, they both had good years where you could see them developing over the course of the year, and they're both big dudes. I think in particular O.J. Howard, I think he's like 6'5", 250. He's no slouch, and he can run block. He throws his body around. He can catch some passes. So there's some guys out there. Austin Hooper's a guy, a name that you hear all the time. He's more of a receiving guy as well, but there's some guys out there that can play. If I was the Green Bay Packers, I would be looking at one of these. There's some tight ends coming up in the draft that are, 6'5", 250, 6'5", 260, running 4.7s, running 4.6s. I would be excited about guys like Sam Laporta out of Iowa, that Luke Musgrave kid, the Oregon State guy. And then there's a kid, I forgot his name, but he's the Notre Dame first. I think he's gonna be a first-round draft pick. What's his name? Michael Mayer. He just looks the part. I mean, they just look like old school Gronk style tight ends, like guys that can pass, block.
Mark Bavaro.
Yeah. So
to bring up a name,
I would love to get one of those guys in here. But if like it's like if Tunyon put on 10 pounds and fully committed to being a blocker, that ACL thing, you never know how people react from that. Like he didn't have the statistical year that he wanted, certainly, but the fact that I thought he made a ton of strides in like trying to develop and improve his game, like you almost like you kind of almost want to bring him back. I don't know how many other good solutions there's going to be on the free agent market as well.
Yeah, just with the tight end position, you got to just recognize, you got to understand that players got to understand that. Yeah, you see Travis Kelce doing what he's doing, but you see guys like the guy we always talked about on our show, Mercedes Lewis, doing what he's done with the run game, and they got players coming in free agents, going to a new team and college players coming, college tight ends coming out, they got to understand, like you said, 5-tool tight end. You can't just be a guy who comes off the backfield or comes off the line of scrimmage catching balls. You got to be able to help the offensive line, help your run game as well. Block and seriously block. Don't just have commit to a block where you just throw a shoulder in there. Learn how to use your hands inside. Learn how to make sure you talk with your tackles or whoever you're lined up next to and say, all right, how are we going to handle this block if we get a wide 9 or a tight, or even, how are we going to handle that block so then we can help the running game. So have those conversations to know, okay, this is where a team will look at you and be like, all right, yeah, he's about that life. He's about the run game life. And then we could catch the ball. He could catch the ball and do things down the football field.
All right, last question of the day.
Yep.
So season's over. We made a lot of proclamations on this show this year. And I was trying to think of what my biggest miss was. What was your biggest miss?
Man, I don't know.
What thing you just go like, boy, I really screwed that one up. I think I know what mine. I think I know what mine was. You want to hear it?
Yeah, go ahead. Give me some time to think.
So week 1, we played Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, Danielle Hunter and Z they're gonna do their thing. They're good players.
Yeah.
But I did not think their interior line was going to give us trouble. And they crushed us. They crushed us in the run game. They pressured us in the passing game. Their interior defensive line, they played at a much higher level than I was ready for. And I think they shocked the offense in general with the way that they kind of ate up our guards and center.
Yeah. I'll say my biggest miss, thinking about it, I'll say probably what would be Aaron and his leadership and how it would come into the player, how the players would take it. I was thinking they would take it easy because he's a leader. He's been a part of this team. He's been successful. But as we saw, it didn't quite go that route. You could tell the other players were either offended or like, bro, don't talk to me like that. It was one of those two ways because you could see through that lull they had of that 5-game losing streak that Aaron started one direction, say like, let me try this out. Let me point guys out. Let me point guys out in the media. Let me say this to the media or Pat McAfee show, whatever. And then guys basically were responding in their way. If it was in the locker room, if it was on the field, and that's part of the reason of that lull. But then towards the end of the season, they individually figured it out. But it wasn't because of Aaron. It's because those players, Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and other young players, is like, you know what, we got to figure it out. We got to do what we need to do for us. And then Aaron and us all started clicking together to get to that position, almost getting to the playoffs.
You're making a really compelling case for him not to be there. Right.
I mean, I'm not trying to do that, but yeah, you see that.
That's what that,
right?
Because what I'm hearing from you is the star quarterback was complaining that the guys that he was playing with were not prepared.
Yep.
And at some point, somebody else has to, like, they could be all fed up with that and they don't want to hear it, or you know, it's Aaron, they got to do whatever. But at some point, they did play better, and what it sounds like is that somebody else probably, whether it was leaders in those rooms, whether it was a Mercedes Lewis, whether it was an assistant coach, stepped in and got those guys ready to play. And whoever that person is, or those group of people, whether it's Aaron Jones, whether it's Mercedes, whether it's Randall Cobb, those people are probably the glue now.
Correct.
Maybe more so than,
or they took it upon themselves.
Or it was Jordan Love. Because Aaron Jones came out at the Super Bowl and was like, dude, I will ride with Jordan Love. I'm ready. He's ready to play. And we have not heard a definitive from a guy like an Aaron Jones standing. It told me, oh yeah, he can play. But he was like, nope, we would be just fine with him. He can come out. He can come out and play.
And I would probably say the same thing, because as players, we know this. When we're in that situation, it's like, you know what? I'm gonna ride with who wants to ride with me. If I understand Aaron, if Aaron is doing his thing, much respect to him. Do his darkness process.
Would you say though, regardless, what if he wasn't ready? What if you're just, wouldn't it be easier just to be like, yeah, if he's got to play next year, like, we're all going to step up and make it happen for him. Because he was like, no, he's like, we're good.
Yeah,
Aaron doesn't
Aaron
want to play.
Jones to Love, right? To
Yeah,
Love.
yeah, or about Love, right?
About Love, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'd rather do that because why?
Mhm.
It's a definite, and he has the buy-in, and he wants to be there,
Mhm.
and nothing. I'm not talking ill of Aaron. If Aaron is doing him,
Mhm.
but that there's no security. There's no like hard evidence of
We need to
him
turn the
wanting.
page.
Right. Yeah. If you want to turn the page, go right ahead, Aaron. If you want to go to Jets, you want to toy around with going to Oakland or whatever in those conversations, go right ahead. You doing you. But you know what? Somebody that we know that wants to be here, that I've seen practice, I practice with them over and over. You know what? I'm gonna ride with him if that's the case. No problem. Because this is the business and this is how we gotta roll. I gotta have my mind ready for that.
I think you got me convinced.
Yeah.
I think you got me convinced.
And that's why I love Aaron and AJ Dillon, because those guys, those are the 1-2 group in the room that kept their same path the whole season. You know,
And
regardless
performance-wise,
it did not waver. You didn't.
Yeah, you're right.
Why? If you just watched the run game, you wouldn't have thought the season went the way it went because they were still producing even when they had their tough games. You know, fumbles or lost. You know, didn't get a whole bunch of yardage. They still were working. You didn't hear no complaining from them. Like, hey, look, I got to do this better. I got to do that better. I need to do. It was all about me. You know,
Aaron
about
Jones. Aaron Jones at any point during this year could have been like, I should probably be getting the ball more.
Yeah, it never
Right?
did. Not
once. And he
Not
never
once.
does. And he never
Never
does.
does.
He puts on that goddamn sombrero and those Macho Man glasses, and I fall in love with him all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And those are the guys you want on the team. And so that's going to help whoever is back there quarterbacking. That's going to help it get right along with the guys coming back on defense.
AG, let everybody know where they can find you.
Man, you can find me back on Twitter, Ahman Green 30 on one word, and that's also Instagram. So, Mike, you don't have to worry about all the letters and words, but I'll mention you can find me on TikTok at Ahman Green's Gamers Lounge on TikTok as well. So let everybody know, Mike, where they can find you.
Yeah, man. Mike Wall 68 on Twitter and TikTok. Process to Perform on Instagram. Everybody, check out that Gamers Lounge, man. It's fun it's a fun watch. If you're, I don't even know what the hell I'm looking at, but I still enjoy it.
Hey, we're teaching people don't get hacked, basically.
See you, bro.